Hello, welcome to GTech Techno Solution Private Limited. Now we are going to discuss about joints, tendons and ligaments. So these are the topics that we are going to cover. Joint movement, types of joints, and in types of joints we have fixed or immovable joints, slightly movable joints, movable or synovial joints. And our next topic is types of synovial joints, which has plain joint, saddle joint, hinge joint, pivot joint, ball and socket joint, ellipsoid joint. Our next topic is condyloid joints, gliding joints, sacroiliac joints, shoulder joint, wrist, fingers and ankles. Then we have the connective tissues, in which we will be studying about tendons, ligaments and cartilage. So let us see. What is joint movement? A joint is a place where two or more bones meet. Without joints, our bodies would not be able to move. The joints, along with the skeleton and your muscular system, will be responsible for the movement front, forward or backward that a human body can produce. There are several types of joints, and each of the joint will produce different types of movements and different amounts of movements. Let us see the types of joints. There are three types of joints: fixed or immovable joints, slightly movable joints, movable or synovial joints. If you see, in fixed or immovable joints, the joints are fixed and they don't move, whereas in slightly movable joints, we can move them slightly. Whereas in movable or synovial joints, we can give a large amount of movement, as you can see. Let us study fixed or immovable joints in detail. There are fewer than 10 immovable joints in your body, and they are sometimes called as fibrous joints. That's because the bones are held together using tough fibers. In your immovable joints, you have the immovable joints in skull and pelvis, where the several bones have fused together to form a rigid structure which is tough and immovable. So that makes our skull and pelvis to be tough and immovable joints, which are joined using fibers. Next we have our slightly movable joints. Slightly movable joints are made up of cartilage. Cartilage is nothing but a cushion type of joint which is used to join the bones. So the bones are joined by a cushion type of stuff known as cartilage. The joints between the vertebrae in a spine are joined using your cartilage, hence they are cartilaginous joints. Here in slightly movable joints, the bones can move a little bit, but they can't move with a high difference because your ligaments will stop them from moving too far. That is why we can bend straighten and rotate through the back. But we can't move far because we have the cartilage which is held by the ligaments, which doesn't allow us to move further. So here, if you see, this is a cross-sectional view of a vertebrae, the vertebral column of a human. So here, the cushions of cartilage is used for joining the bones of your vertebrae. That gives a slight amount of movement but not a total movement. Next we are going to see about freely movable or synovial joints. In freely movable joints we have 90% of the joints that we have in our body. So 90% of the joints come under movable joints or synovial joints. Synovial joints will contain a synovial membrane which is having synovial fluid. So your synovial membrane, as you can see over here, will have the synovial fluid which takes care that you have a smooth lubricating movement. So all the moving parts are held together by ligaments so that they don't move too much. Since this is freely movable joints, they are highly movable, as you have the lubricating agent also over here. So these highly movable joints are your shoulder and knee. So your shoulder and knee are synovial joints. Let us see further about synovial joints. We have a synovial membrane that lines your bone, and it has a synovial fluid, a liquid that is used for lubricating your joint and allowing it to move freely. So this ensures that your joint has a free movement. If you see, the smooth coverings of your bones at the end are known as cartilage, and they are covered by your synovial membranes. So these ensure that you have a free movement. The joint capsule sleeve protects the outer holes of knee together so that they don't move too much, ensuring that you have a perfect movement. Let us see the types of synovial joints. We have the following types: ball and socket, hinge, and in your knee we have joint structures. If you see, we have pivot joint in the region of neck and ellipsoidal joint in the region of your wrist. So your knee has ball and socket joint. Even your shoulder has your ball and socket joint. The upper and the lower arm is joined by hinge type of joint. We'll see the types of synovial joints in detail. So there are 6 types of synovial joints. which includes your plane joint, followed by your hinge joint, your pivot joint, ellipsoid joint, saddle joint, ball and socket joint. If you see in plane joint, we have two bone structures which are joined in a plane. So this happens in our hand, say at this portion. So these portions are enlarged as this. So this is your plane joint. If you see hinge joint occurs in the bones where you have your upper arm and your lower arm is joined using your hinge joint. Your pivot joint is a joint that happens near your neck. It has the structure as this. Your ellipsoid joint can be found near your knuckles, in your hands. So that is your ellipsoid joint, and it has the movement as this. Your lower portion can move over here and this can move over this side. Next we have the saddle joint. Your saddle joint occurs in your hand at the starting of the fingers. So this is saddle joint. Next we have a ball and socket joint. Can be found in your shoulders. It will be like a ball and a socket. So that is why it has the name as ball and socket joint. Let us see the types of synovial joints in detail. So the plane joint has its movement like this, as two planes are joined. So the movement will be a flat plane movement. This can be found in your vertebrates. Our next joint is saddle joint. So in saddle joint, we have the movement as left and right and up and down, as you know, as you can see over here. So this can be found in your hand. These type of joints. Saddle joint is found in your hand, and it joins the ends of two bones that fit together in a special way, allowing the movement to be in forward and backwards and left to right, but it does not allow rotation. For example, your thumb has the saddle joint, which allows the movement in forward and backward and left and right, but it does not allow rotation. A third type of joint is hinge joint. If you see in hinge joint, we have the movement as to and fro. So this can be found at a region of your upper arm and your lower arm's junction. So that comprises of your hinge joint. Our fourth type of synovial joint is pivot joint. In pivot joint, you have a rotating movement, and that is up to a certain limit. This can be found in the junction of your neck. Let us see hinge joint in detail. So if you see, your hinge joint can be found at the junction of your upper and lower arms location. So your humerus, that is your upper arm, and your lower arm ulna is joined using your hinge joint, and it gives the movement to be forward and backward. You can move your arm only forward and backward. It doesn't rotate at the junction of your upper and lower arm. That is exactly what is known as elbow. So, the junction of your upper and your lower arm, that is your elbow, has your hinge joint. And it gives only upward and downward movement. We can rotate only your lower arm while keeping your upper arm still. So your elbow is a type of hinge joint, and it is between your humerus and ulna and radius, which is your lower arm, and it allows your arm to move forward and backward, that is bend and straighten. Your elbow also has a pivot joint between your ulna and radius, that is over here. So which allows us to rotate the lower arm while keeping your upper arm in a still position. There is a gliding action that occurs between your humerus and your radius over here. We are going to see the structure of a hinge joint. This can be demonstrated easily using your knee joint. Is a hinge joint. Knee is a very large and complex joint. If you see your thigh bone, that is your femur, is hinged, that is, it is having a hinge joint on tibia, that is your foot's bone. So your leg can be bent, and that is known as flexion, and it can be straightened as a straight leg, and this is known as extension. These movements are done by your leg only with the help of your hinge joint, to be specific over here. If you see, we have the ligaments. Which ensures that the bones are together by crossing it inside your joint. Doesn't allow too much of movement of the bone. So these ligaments are known as cruciate ligaments. Your other ligaments over here will stabilize the joint and will ensure that the movement does not exceed. Your patella ensures that the increase in the leverage of your thigh muscle. So this is about your hinge structure in your knee. Our next type of synovial joint is pivot joint. Pivot joint has a ring of bone that fits over a bone protrusion. Protrusion around which it can rotate. So your protrusion is nothing but the projected portion of the bone around which your ring bone rotates. So these joints allow rotation. So the example for your pivot joint is between your atlas and axis in the neck, which allows you to shake your head. If you see, the movement of your head can be like this. So this is what is meant by your pivot joint. You have a ring bone and it fits into a bone protrusion, allowing free rotation of your neck. Our next type of synovial joint is ball and socket joint, which has a ball and a socket. So that gives the name as ball and socket joint. And next we have our ellipsoid joint. Let us see further about ball and socket joint. In ball and socket joints, the round end of the bone fits inside a cup-shaped ending on the another bone. So that gives a structure of a ball and a socket. And these give the movement in almost all directions, and also it ensures that you have rotation. So this can be found in your leg, that is near your pelvis. It is the most mobile joint in your body. So this can be found in your shoulders and hip region. So that ensures you have a high movement over your shoulders and hip region. In your hip, if you see, the hip joint is the large ball and socket joint in your body. So the head of the femur, that is your thigh leg, thigh bone, which is the longest bone, and it is shaped like a ball, and it fits into the socket, which is shaped like a cup of the pelvis. So this gives a ball and a socket effect. So the bones are covered in cartilage and they are reinforced with ligaments, which ensures a smooth movement. So that is about your hip joint, which is a ball and a socket joint. Next we have condyloid joints. Condyloid joints have an oval shaped bone which fits into a correspondingly shaped bone end, and they allow forward and backwards, left and right movement, just like the movement that your wrist gives, but it does not give rotation. If you see, your condyloid joint can be found between your metacarpals and phalanx in the hand, that is, near your wrist. So that is about condyloid joints. Next we have gliding joints. Moving on, we have the gliding joints, which has two flat faces of the bone that slide over one another. They allow a tiny bit of movement in almost all directions. If you see over here, we have two joints, and they have two flat faces that slide over one another, and they allow a small amount of movement which enables us our foot to move. So this is gliding joint. Next we have a sacroiliac joint. The sacroiliac joint is an example of synovial joint, and it allows little movement. It allows slight rotation of the sacrum against your hip bones, that is your ilium. So hence it is known as sacroiliac joint, which ensures there is a movement between your hip bone and the sacrum. It helps to absorb some of the forces that is produced by your activities like jumping and landing. So that is supported by your sacrum and ilium. Next we have our shoulder joint. In your shoulder joints, the head of your upper arm bone, that is your humerus, is shaped like a ball, and it fits into the cup-shaped socket of the scapula. So that makes your ball and socket joint in your shoulder. The bones are covered in cartilage, and they are held together with ligaments that ensure that you don't have too much of movement. The shoulder joint has more freedom to move than your hip joint. As you know, you can rotate your arm much more than your legs. However, this means it can dislocate more easily. Hence, you have to be careful with your shoulder joint. Next, we are going to see the joints in your wrist, fingers and ankles. Your wrist is more than just a hinge joint. It can perform many complex movements. It includes your flexion, that is your bending, extension, that is straightening back, abduction and adduction. So these are the complex movements that can be done by your wrist. The fingers can be made into a fist. So that is known as flexion. When you straighten your fingers, it is known as extension. When you spread out your fingers wide open, then it is known as abduction. When you bring them close together, keeping all your fingers together, the movement is known as adduction. So these are the complex movements that is done by your wrist. Your joints and sports have a very important relation. The joints enable us to make an extremely wide range of movements under our conscious control. The different types of joints allows us to move in many ways and to perform many different actions like running, jumping and moving forward and backward. The joint flexibility is a very important aspect in your sports, especially in activities like gymnastics and diving that require your extreme movements with extreme control. The participants in all the sports can benefit from a greater range of movement that comes with improved flexibility, and this improved flexibility is assured by your joints, which enables you to move but with high control. If you see the flexibility exercises like yoga and other aerobics exercise increase with the range of the movements at joints. This can reduce the risk of injury and damage, as the joints are able to move and absorb the forces. Thus, overstretching your joints can cause injury to them. Hence, you have to be careful with your joints. Your joints tend to change as you become older. Most people's flexibility deteriorates as they get older. This is because the connective tissues around the joints become less elastic, which gives you less flexibility and less movement. It is usually hereditary, but injured joints that have not healed properly will lead to joint problems. So that occurs in old age. Flexibility exercises that you perform and extend warm-ups before your exercise can help to protect your joints, but ultimately it becomes harder and harder to maintain the same levels of flexibility. So, having a healthy joint is required so that in your old age you will have a flexible and a much better joint which doesn't have injuries. Next we have the connective tissues. There are three types of connective tissues: tendons, ligaments, and cartilage. Your tendons are used for connecting your muscles to your bones, whereas your ligaments are tough elastic fibers that links bones to bones. Your cartilage prevents the ends of the bone from rubbing together at joints. If you see, your tendons will anchor muscles to bones, allowing the muscles to move the skeleton. Your tendons are not very elastic. If they were, then the force produced by the muscles would be absorbed instead of creating a moment, which may lead to tear of tendon because of too much of force. Next we are going to see about ligaments. Ligaments are responsible for holding joints together, and they prevent the bones moving out of the position during the stress of physical activity. If they are pulled or twisted too far by extreme physical movements, then your ligaments can tear and the joint may dislocate. So it is good that you ensure you don't have extreme physical movements. Thank you so much for joining GTech on joints, ligaments and tendons. Hope you learned a lot about joints. Thank you so much.